welcome to the Catholic Forge, a conversational podcast where we gather to explore our Catholic faith and discuss how it forms our lives. All are welcome to join in this conversation and journey. Thank you for listening. Hey everyone, welcome to the show. This is Eric in Missouri.
This is Ben in Kentucky.
And I'm John in Illinois.
You sure are. And golly gee, I don't think we've all three been together in a little while here.
No, it's been a while.
5 weeks, 6 weeks, something like that.
Sounds about right.
Well, it's a delight to have the dream team, or whatever, reunited for us all to be present.
Oh, I was going to say that.
Well, you get the credit for sure, because you have told the most present type little quips. Looking forward to this topic, the ministry of presence. This
do I get a present for it?
You sure do. This again.
It took him a while, Ben. It took him a while.
Oh my gosh. I just like Ben's groan. His this again is one of those topics that sort of was on the drawing board from the beginning, and we've alluded to it in a bunch of different episodes. Most especially, I think, quality time with spouse. When we talked about like knowing and acknowledging your love language, and also in oh golly, I just looked at the episode list and now I can't remember. But anyway, we've alluded to it a bunch of times. We've kind of graced the topic, but now at last we're going to really get to it. And as we were preparing just a moment ago, Ben drew forth from his encyclopedic memory.
Yeah, right.
And so, but Ben, help us to enter into this with this remarkable meditation. Go ahead and give it the intro, and please share.
Yeah, it was just dumb luck that the timing worked out on this. I'm currently reading a book by Saint Jean-Pierre de Caussade, and anybody correct me on that pronunciation. He's French, but sure. It's called Abandonment to Divine Providence. And I'm only a quarter of the way through it, but the whole book seems to be about kind of learning to feel and always be present to God's will in your life, right down to the present moment, right down to each and every moment of the day, knowing God's will, no matter how mundane or simple. So just last week, I came across this awesome quote, and then when we were talking before the show, realized it was pretty applicable to what we were doing here. So I'm going to substitute a word here or there. So if somebody looks this up, I don't want them calling me out on misquoting. It's I think 1600s, so some of the language is a little clunky. So to make it a little easier to understand, I might throw in a few things. But he says here, "The whole of creation cannot fill the human heart, for it is greater than all that is not God. The human heart is on a higher plane than the material creation, and for this reason nothing material can satisfy it. The divine will is a deep abyss, of which the present moment is the entrance. If you plunge into this abyss, you will find it infinitely more vast than your desires." So there you have it. So the present moment is the entrance into that abyss of God's will. So I instantly highlighted that on my Kindle. I thought, that's pretty heavy. I need to come back to that sometime. So that's the show. We can...
yeah, that was it.
Thanks for listening.
Just think about that.
Greater can be said.
It's our little onion of meditation for this episode, sort of peeling it back as the present moment applies not only, of course, to our relationship with God, with the Trinity, but also in our relationships to each other. And that's sort of what we were trying to address, I would say, in other episodes, but here especially we can, again, peel back some of those layers. And so where should we start? I mean, I guess we're kind of on two sides, person to person or person to capital P person. What do you think?
Take a moment with the quote there, because I think we'll keep going to layers on it. But with that quote, that beginning part, that idea that the human heart is greater than all of creation, that's an idea that we heard. You've heard about a God-shaped hole, that each of us has a hole in our heart, and we can try to fill it with anything. That nothing really fits, though. The only thing that actually, the key to that hole, to filling that hole, is God, and that completes us. And I think that's relevant. I never would have made this connection without that quote, but that's a relevant point to the ministry of presence, because the ministry of presence, or this idea, is we are so distracted by often the world, the pleasures of the world, the tyranny, the tyranny of the moment, the different difficulties that we're running into, that we fail to be present to who is before us, whether that be God at Mass or in prayer, or our children. And so it's a really neat thing that he's connected those two pieces together. And so I think that there is a great one. My first place to start with ministry for presence is let's start with the home and the family is where I would vote for. But I love that beginning, the idea that all of creation isn't enough for the human heart. And so all of the things that I place before my children, all the little tyrannies of the moments, all of the pleasures and all of the TV shows that I'm not present to my children for, are nothing. They're not nearly enough to do that. So I love that image there. Thank you, Ben, so much for that quote.
Yeah, no problem. Like I said, I'm glad I came across it. And a quick correction, he actually might not be Saint Jean-Pierre. It might just be Father Jean-Pierre. So if there's somebody out there knowledgeable is aware of that, they're like, he's
no
not
one
a saint.
knowledgeable
Sorry.
in here.
Sorry about that. But the home, I mean, this is something that I've kind of had as a goal, and I've struggled with for a long time, of just trying to come back to that. I like that phrase you used, the tyranny of the moment?
Yeah, I believe that's a coined term of Matthew Kelly.
Oh, okay. Well, it's a good phrase, because sometimes that's what it feels like to me is tyranny. Is like this moment is crushing down and there's something so important and it's got to be done. And oh man, the world's going to fall apart and you just got to chill out and realize there is no tyranny. It's kind of self-imposed, It's like I'm creating this tyranny on myself right now.
Yeah, absolutely. We've just started school and we're getting the kids off in the morning, and I'll be kind of running around, get in the car, lock in, snap the seatbelt. And then I hear myself, I'm like, what does this matter? What does this matter? And then instantly I'll be like, oh, that's okay. And the kids are looking at me like, what happened? Daddy snapped.
What did we do?
He's all of a sudden being nice. He was just rushing us. Because I'll have that awakening, that moment. But I wish I would catch myself more often when I'm on my own or racing around or driving really fast down the road, going, got to get there. And I'll go, why? It's okay.
Yeah. It's so weird.
There's so few things that you have to be reckless driving for.
There's plenty to be said for efficiency, but that's a curious reality that when you escape that sort of, for lack of a better word, the serenity of the moment, sort of a spiritual serenity, the haste will hurt other people. Like you said, you end up yelling at your kids for no reason. You end up driving fast and endangering other drivers and yourself and your passengers, right? And so when that haste overcomes, even though it's reasonable, because you want to get them to school on time, you need to get to work on time, you got a meeting, that's fair. But I think what Ben's passage here, and also what the scriptures are also calling to, is a deeper mindfulness, a deeper sense of presence. Certainly from the Psalms with like the be still kind of language, right? But also just that more disciplined sense of quiet, slow, intentional. And frankly, I don't mind to say it, but even when we're podcasting sometimes, I barely hear you because I'm only thinking about what I'm going to say next.
Yeah, we can tell that in the quality of the podcast, really.
It hurts.
Well, no, I edit all those I edit all those things out, but I think you understand is so you want to think of a good thing to say that will contribute to the conversation at the sake of the actual exchange, and that is that's what we say. This is a conversational podcast. That's the spirit of what we do.
Yeah.
One other Ben, were you going to say something? I don't want to cut you off. One other thought that I had on not one other thought, but a thought that I had on this over the summer, we did a different type of Bible camp at our church, and we had the parents come with their kids, and there was a time where we broke the kids up. So the kids did activities with the parents, but then we broke the kids up. We sent them off to do their own activity. We kept the parents behind, and we thought we're going to use this time to help form our parents. And one of the things was on being present to your children. And so I gave a little prelude, to the speaker that I had invited to come talk. And I'm talking about the importance of quality time with your kids. And he gets up and no more than 45 seconds into his talk, he says, "You hear all this crap about quality time. It's not about quality time." He says, "I am majorly in favor of quantity time." And I'm like, "What are you doing? No, it's so important." And he went on to explain. And I was like, "Oop, I just got schooled right there." What his point was that we all know how important quality time is, to sit down and have those deep conversations with our kids and our wives, and that's great. But most of life is not sitting down having these great grand conversations. Most of life is the little things. It's talking about sharing, let me have a bite of your candy bar there. What I usually ask my kids, but it's little things. That was a stupid analogy, or not analogy, the example. But it's little things. And his point was, you have to have quantity time so that you can have quality time. It's spending time, lots of time with your kids, maybe just driving them to soccer or driving them to school, being with them, that little conversations happen, and those little conversations enable bigger conversations. If we don't have those little conversations, but we only want to have the great, deep, grandeur conversations, the grandeur conversations are never going to come. Our kids aren't going to come talk to us about it because they don't have any small relationship with us. And so I found that shaking to me, who's always talking about importance of making sure you have quality time with your kids. The quantity time is really important too. And that's part of the ministry of presence, because while I'm not saying anything significant to my children, I'm being present to my children. I'm there with them. I'm existing and exploring that moment.
That's really good. I've never thought about that. And Eric and I did the quality time episode and never really even considered that. And I don't know if this is what that man was saying, but it kind of increasing your odds type of game, I get. Like if you throw enough, the more darts you throw, the more chance you're going to hit a bullseye just randomly,
I think we embodied the spirit of that sentiment when I referred back to the prayer part 1 episode, when you talked about creating an environment for prayer. And so I think that's what, even if you only had 5 minutes of that solitude in prayer, that would be 5 minutes of quality, not, rushing into your prayer closet, decompressing, praying the liturgy of the hours or whatever you're going to do, rush, get through it, done. So that was good, but maybe not quality. So I think that's a wise gesture and notion that the quantity, you're absolutely right, leads you to a better chance for quality. You're setting yourself up for success.
It definitely
it
can't
makes sense.
substitute. You can't I'm just going to drive my kids around all the time and not really ever talk to them. But understanding the importance of it, if I'm only grasping for the quality time, I miss something in the just being present to them, because that really lays that foundation. So I found that as terms of parenting, it was a little, oh boy, I have to
that's
rethink
super
stuff.
smart.
Yeah,
because quality time is one of those things that you really can't force. It's one of those. Well, Eric, maybe this is going to be a bad analogy, but as a musician, if you set out and say, all right, tonight's performance is going to be one of my best, it'll probably mess you up and it won't be. But it's usually looking back that you say, you know what, tonight's performance was one of my best. And at quality time is like that. If I set out with Evie, if I schedule 2:00 Sunday afternoon, we're going to have some awesome quality time. It can backfire in a million ways. She throws a fit or gets upset about something, and then I walk away like, oh, there goes our quality time. But yeah, when you increase that quantity, you're tipping the odds in your favor. There's a better chance that you're going to stumble upon some true quality time.
It's the practice. Eric is going to go play his symphony, but if he doesn't practice, doesn't put in the time beforehand, he's going to come out sounding sour. I think we ought to come in, kind of land on this concept. So really, ministry of presence is what it sounds like. It's the concept that most of the people in our life don't need us to give them great wisdom or to teach them. They need us to walk with them. And of course, this is the way we see Christ doing a lot of ministry. The first thing he does with so many of the people that he meets is not get up and talk, is he sits down and he has a meal with them. And we see so many meal scenes in the New Testament where Christ is sitting down and he's being present to the people. And that's building relationship. He's walking with them in their life where they are, and then he's able to help them. He's able to lead them and guide them. And working with teens over the years, a teen would come in with a problem and I've got an answer. And I've heard that this is a male problem. I don't know if it truly is a gender thing, but men are fixers. And so I've heard that it's because I'm a man that I'm screwed up this way. Somebody comes in with a problem and I want to give a solution. But
I believe it.
Sure. 90%
I'm
of people
Yep.
don't want a solution handed to them. They want to come in, they want to tell you your problem, and they want you to listen. They want you to hear them.
Yeah.
I think about myself when I go to somebody with a problem. I go to Eric and I'm struggling with this stuff. I don't want him to come up and rattle off 10 good ways to fix that problem. I want him to go, man, I understand that. I've been there, and to walk with me through that thing. And so that's really what the focus of Ministry of Presence is to remember that it's the journey. It's the walking with our children, and then as we're evangelizing to other people, as we're sharing with other people, is to be present to them as people. We don't have an agenda of where we need to get them. We're with them, and walking with them ultimately leads them towards love and God and that relationship with Christ. And so Christ is the one who really develops this model, and we're just trying to give it a fancy title, coin a term, and now we get to take credit.
Yeah.
and also a really poignant and deliberate paying attention to the other person. I had a pastor I worked with, and when you went into his office, and let's just say if you can imagine, like you're sitting down and you're facing him, behind you, the person talking to Father, was a sign on the wall that he could see, and it said, "Stay in the moment," as he's looking past me, right, at the wall. Because you can imagine, especially for a pastor, I'm presuming, I guess, that their minds can race. They're thinking about this thing and the next thing and the phone call they just got and someone's dying or whatever it is. The church is in debt. I don't know whatever it is. And so I appreciated that he had that sign in the office, "Stay in the moment," And it also, I was thinking about it today and yesterday for a couple days, kind of pondering it, how the really, really great love songs have something like that in there, where they're not great because they're about love as a concept, but they're really great because they're about love and intimacy, specifically because it's about one person looking at another or doing certain things to another person. Uh-oh.
Come on now.
I can see heaven in your eyes. Right? Was that from like Footloose or something like that? I don't know. But there's such an intentionality there. It's not about love as a concept. It's about me feeling for you this way and showing you by doing this, whether it's looking in your eyes or this or that or the other thing. And that's one thing that I have found in my own life struggling with, especially when people come to meet with me. And I mean, like where I am now at this parish, I don't know how many weddings we do a year, 30 or so. And these couples come in, and in my head, I want to be just efficient about it. I just want to get them through, get the preparation done, and get them out, And I have to remind myself, this is important to them. And it's important to me. It needs to be important to me that I cherish how important it is to them to listen, to really listen to what they want, to really hear it, not just to go to the next item, the next item, the next item, to really have a nearness, to look them in the eyeballs, right? Unless they're sailors, I don't know, hard to say. And maybe that's a sign of the times or a product of our age of anxiety, that we even have a hard time looking each other in the eyeball, to really, and you get into all that poetry about eye is the window to the soul and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But really, there's such the love songs. There's such an intimacy there, by really seeing a person eye to eye, truly. That I think we miss. And so for me, that's one thing I reflect back on is like you said, John, and you're right, like in the male construct, the fixing nature is strong. But again, when a person, and I know exactly, you cited well. We've actually had conversations that went like that. And I was just thinking ahead to what can I say to fix John, and not really listening to John in the moment, not looking into John's eyes.
I don't know. You're pretty effeminate.
Poetically speaking.
I often feel like when I talk to you, I am very pleased to talk with you about problems. I when we've talked about marriage or things like that or difficulties, you at least are good at pretending. I really feel like I've been heard, and you're always able to kind of contribute in the empathy for it. So I feel like I'm more guilty of that fixer thing, because that's very much my nature. And that may not, I don't mean to say that really is a male attribute or that women aren't fixers. That's just something that somebody said to me. So I don't want to offend anyone out there about it.
And I've been told it as well, and I'm terrible about it. Alice will come to me with something, and I instantly tell her what she needs to do to correct it, and it usually irritates her. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think it's a true stereotype to some degree. But you're talking about eye contact.
It's presumptive, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, John. Ben, please go ahead.
Yeah. Have you guys encountered people though? And I actually admire this, but okay, I don't know how I want to say this. Have you encountered people that are intense with eye contact? Like they don't break it for a minute, and you can tell that they're totally giving you their attention in that moment, and they are really listening and appreciating you, and that's a great thing. But then at some point, about 60 seconds in, I just start to feel squirmy, like, because they don't ever look away, they don't ever like check their like shoelace or anything, like, and like I'm just like, oh man, I'm feeling a little intense here. So it is a great quality, but then at the same time, I have encountered those people that are like super intense with it. You guys know what I'm talking about? You ever?
Absolutely. Yeah. Healthy eye boundary is important. Just like contact, like we should hug people, but there's a limit to how long you should hug, Yeah, like so good strong eye contact every 20 seconds. Take a 1 second glance away, then back. There probably is a format, but it is interesting. I've bragged about the priest that I grew up with as a child, Father Lutz. And one of the things that was so notable about him, that when you came to him and you spoke to him, and he dealt with people that struggled with addictions. He ran a ministry for people with addictions. So he heard a lot of problems and a lot of deep problems. When you spoke to him, you were the only person on earth. He listened so intently to what you said. It was just awesome. And so, that, and there was eye contact there. I don't ever remember it being overbearing, but I can remember talking to him and seeing other people talk to him. And he listened to every single word. And what an incredible thing that is, because he heard so many heartbreaking stories.
Yeah.
But had that gift, and that really is a gift, and it's something that we should cultivate. And of course, that's what we're encouraging in this podcast today, is to really reflect on this idea of how do we cultivate that in our life. And it comes down to that dignity of the human person and recognizing everyone in their struggle, and then also remembering what was in the beginning of your quote, Ben. What else is my mind going to wander to? I think I'm actually going to do what you said, Eric. I'm going to hang something up on the wall that says, be in the moment. Listen to this person.
That's a really cool idea.
But because what is my mind going to wander to? It's going to wander to, today I've got lasagna for lunch. Or tonight I've got a meeting. I wish this person would shut up. What possible thing of this world could fill my heart? Nothing. But being with this person and being present to them like Christ, that can. And so that's so lovely, that quote, how that comes back to us again on this idea.
Yeah.
What about now in our relationship with God? How does the ministry of presence become important? Of course, we're not ministering to God, but that concept of presence affect. So we've talked about it with our family and then with our friends and walking with them in their struggles. How does that become a necessary component of our faith life?
Oh man, it's absolutely crucial. And I couldn't have looked it up if I had wanted to. There in the Magnificat, they have meditations, at the end of the readings each day. And like a year ago, maybe, I know it was a passage from Carol Houselander. You ever heard of her? She was like a British, I want to say she was British layperson, but she was almost a mystic. She wrote extensively, spiritual matters, Catholic, I mean, of course, and she just had this beautiful passage about God only exists in the present moment. So if you want to find him, that's where you have to go. Now, of course, we're not going to get into the deep theology of, God being,
right.
At all places, at all time, all that stuff. She means it practically, that in your life, in your mind, in your heart, you can only access God in the present moment. He's not, if you're thinking 5 years into the future about your problems, he's not there. And if you're thinking into your past, that's done. You've got to just slow down. Like, John, you referenced the passage, about be still. You got to be still.
Be still and know that I am God.
Yeah, and that's where he is. So it's the present moment is absolutely crucial to the relationship with God in my mind. Eric, you looked like, did you have something on that?
I just wanted to say that I brought that up. But that's fine. John can take the credit again.
Oh, okay.
He stole it from me. I said it earlier in another podcast. So Eric, you stole it from me before. I brought that quote up.
Fair
first.
enough. Okay,
I
that's fine. Okay, I will concede. I mean, Ben, you said it so well. Of course, I absolutely agree. And when we speak of this, I'm confronted by two things: the very best occasions of prayer that I have had, and the worst ones. Because I was or was not able to achieve some semblance of presence in the presence. Okay. Mm-hmm. At the same time, grace is given that God is with the chaotic one as well. With the one whose heart is stormy, whose mind is rattled and shaken, who cannot find this serenity that we speak of. Okay.
True.
And I think for a long time, in my mental space, I thought of that kind of serenity only belonging to the religious, as in sisters and nuns and monks and cloistered types, people who are just so saturated in it that
right.
For them it's like they get out of bed and they're there, and of course that's flawed thinking on my part.
I think that's a pretty common thought, though. I think that a lot of us have that thought.
Yeah. Now maybe that's true because maybe I've never experienced that stillness at that level. That I've never experienced that gateway, like Ben said, the door to the divine will in such a powerful way. But of course we can, again, through practice, we can cultivate and discipline ourselves to have that level of stillness. That is one thing that I would mention about, I'd hate to, please don't take me right at my word with this. I think you'll understand what I'm saying. But the people in my life who I feel are the holiest, how could I know how holy they are? I'm just saying
that I know what you mean.
Those who seem exceptionally devout are those who I would say are more often than not the most still, right? And like they're always on the other side of what is it they make the I don't want to misrepresent a culture. In the old movies, in the samurai movies, in the houses, the walls were made of like
rice paper.
Rice paper, right? I'm not saying that they aren't now. I'm just saying in in the movies, right?
Maybe it isn't rice paper.
Kill Bill,
it's paper, though.
It is paper. Well, the point is, like, it's a paper thin division in their life between standing in the moment with me, and they can just like go right into that sense of nearness to God's presence.
Paper's pretty easy to jump through.
Absolutely. Well, Beverly Hills Ninja with Chris Farley, he fell through it. That's very true. And I don't have any qualifications for that. I'm just saying that in my experience, those people that I see that seem to be really deep into it, they are that way. I'd like to say, just quickly, if you permit me, Tori's sister, my sister-in-law, formerly Emma, but now hopefully I can say this on the podcast. It's done. It's public. Sister Paula Marie, okay, of the Nashville Dominicans. She is one of those people. Joyous, so full of joy, but you can sense a stillness a deep serenity, especially since she has entered religious life now in her second year of postulancy. Or preparation, I guess, if you want to say. So that's just my observation. If I had to approach, what does it look like to really exercise the ministry of presence, that would be one of the attributes. Please.
I think that's perfect. And before I lose this thought, because, man, it just came to me while you were speaking, you kind of put the idea in my head. I think those people are so peaceful because they're not chasing. I think maybe to say it this way, the reason the rest of us are not peaceful and serene is because we're always chasing the future in our brains. Kind of like, if you're dangling, like those cartoons where there's the stick with a little string and a stake hanging in front of the dog, but he can never get to it because it's attached to him or whatever. We're like that. We got those future thoughts and we're always chasing them. So we're always hurried. And those people have learned that that's the trick, that you can't catch the stake. So forget about it. And just be where you are. And then it just, this stillness and calm washes over them. And I think you're absolutely right. And I don't think it's insulting. I think you can presume someone's holiness and be safe. You just can't presume their sinfulness. That's when you get into the judgmental category. They won't be offended if you presume they're holy.
I'm always, it's just an aside, but you always wonder about the mystics. I never met one. But could you tell? I mean, if you passed them in the grocery store, could you tell?
Right.
Like that. Not like if you went to the monastery where they live and they're floating off the ground, then you can tell. But I mean, if you pass them in Mike Scott's video store, like really, is it so evident in their life? I don't know. I've never encountered someone like that before, so I don't know. Hopefully, I would be present enough to recognize it. Final call, John.
Oh, it's hard to wrap it up because I feel like I don't want to repeat things. It is an essential part of our life. We live in a world, and this has been a topic that has come up so many times in so many of our podcasts. We live in a world that encourages the chaos, the busyness, and to not be in the moment. And as we heard in our first quote there is nothing in the world that will satisfy your heart. All of creation, if you were to possess it, would not satisfy that heart. And so this is where we need to turn to that moment of presence, that we need to be present to the God that is there. And in doing so, that makes us present to our family, to our children, to our wife, to those that are with us, that we can walk with them. And as we said, that's what we see with Christ doing. He loves them where they are, but he loves them too much to leave them there. So he goes to where they are, meets them, is present to them, and walks with them as they walk towards Christ. And when we get this present thing right, all other elements of our life fall into place. And so it begins with, as our quote said, being present in this moment to God, being still. Know that God is there. Know that I am God. Sorry, I'm misquoting scripture now. But that's really what we come down to. And what a challenge it is for us in a world that just has no respect even. In fact, would mock silence or stillness or this concept. So it really is going to take a conscious effort and practicing it, because it is so hard to do. I can think of so many times that I have been at Mass trying to be present to God, and all I'm thinking about is the TV show I watched the night before, or all I'm thinking about is the person that I argued with, or I'm going to possibly argue with after Mass because there's some issue at work.
Right.
I am so capable of robbing myself of the moment, and it just is one of those things that I think that we all struggle with. We're all broken, and it is worth every day waking up and starting anew for this effort to be still, to be present to God, and to be present to those that God has placed in our life.
Ben?
No, that's awesome. That's dead on. I can't add anything to that.
And I will, what do they say in debates when you don't want to talk for the rest of your time? I surrender my time. Is that what they say? Something like that? Yeah, very good, very good. Well, what a delightful conversation, gentlemen. Not only just great to be back together, but it was, again, it was good to leave this one in the bourbon barrel for a little while. Okay, leave it in the rack house. I think it seasoned well with time. This was a great talk. Thank you. And this has been That was too violent. This has been the Catholic Forge. Thank you for listening, and as always, we'd like to close with a prayer and a blessing. May God the Father,
God the Son,
and God the Holy Spirit bless you, guard you, and lead you to eternal life. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Thank you for listening to the Catholic Forge. We hope you've enjoyed this episode and will leave us a positive rating and review on iTunes, SoundCloud, or YouTube. You can continue the conversation with us on Facebook and Twitter, and to get a hold of us, you can reach us at thecatholicforge@gmail.com. For more information regarding the podcast, visit our website at www.thecatholicforge.com. We especially thank our holy, WHOLLY, and HOLY, our holy present wives, for their continued support of this project, and we thank you very much for being present and for listening.
I was hoping you'd sneak a present in there.